Attention all subjects. This is another disembodied voice once again in like forever telling you there is another fucking zombie outbreak thingy. And you shits love it. Seriously, why? Bloody humans. In any case, here is some advice to help in your survival. Running like a bitch is faster than reloading. So do that. Or don't, I don't care, I am just a voice telling you meatbags what to do on behalf of the Warlord. Anyways, if you aren't being cannibalized to death, or you are, then be nice and shut the fuck and watch this latest broadcast. And have a nice day.
What is it that people love about survival horror games? I mean, if you were in any of the following situations, a mass murderer misusing arts and crafts items trying to kill you in a clock tower, or being stuck in a building with only a few bullets left in your handgun as you are surrounded by corpses that want to keep on living and are not afraid to walk this world alone, you would crap yourself. But luckily, that is the black magic of video games, letting you play out those situations without the brown trousers and potential death and possible PTSD. For now, until we bring our consciousness into cyberspace and neuralink ourselves into the games we play. But the survival horror gaming universe is stacked with plenty of titles to survive the horror in, with a variety of ways to succeed. Shooting, stealthing, magicking, bludgeoning, or all in between. But there are many games of survival horror that are overshadowed by their more successful brethren, regardless of how fair or unfair that may be. So, it is the objective of this broadcast to my fellow subjects to bring one of them into the light, and spread the good word of this game that I think deserves it.
What is it?
I heard someone say. Well, it is this, Daymare 1998, produced by the Italian studio Invader Studios and published by Destructive Studios and All In Games. It was released to the public on Windows PCs via Steam and GOG on September 17th, 2019. And then for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One on April 28th, 2020, when most of the world at the time was dancing the COVID panic boogaloo, or the alternative, the bog roll roly-poly. Now, to call this game a homage to survival horror games of the past is actually kind of true. And not just a homage, but a game clearly created by those at whom have a deep love and care for the games of the past. And it does such a damned good job at it too. Since the mid-2010s, many games within their specific genres have done something of a revival to seemingly unpopular game genres, as many indies, or sometimes larger game studios, decide to create games that they loved when they were much younger and wish to show to future generations. Whereas games like Wastelands 2 and Pillars of Eternity brought CRPGs back into popularity, and games like Dusk and Ion Fury brought shooters into their roots again, this game kind of started a revival of classic survival horror games of the 1990s. Tank controls, inventory management, and all. And upon release, this game got thrashed. Quite unfairly, this Warlord might add. Yeah, the graphics look like something from the late Xbox 360 era, the jankiness of its visuals can lead to frustration at points, and it doesn't have the many things that Resident Evil players may find wanting. But I hope that from this broadcast that I hope to shed some light on this game, and hopefully convince at least quite a few people to give it a go at least. So, is this game worth going to? Does it really live up as a homage to the Resident Evils of the past? Well, let us delve and hear what people think of the in-game weather.
God damn this cock-sucking storm!
Reminisce about our favourite TV shows and films of the 1990s. Like Pals, such an overrated show, and Dependence Week, and fear the sight and horrors of the wall zombie. Now let us set forth and fear the 1990s again, in Daymare 1998. Now, before we can delve into the pros and cons about everything within Daymare 1998, let's talk history briefly. Personally, I have never heard of this game until I stumbled upon it during one of my many searches through the GOG marketplace, and I stumbled upon this rather standout game. This one, obviously. And reading the description of the game, it had me intrigued. An indie game take on the classic original Resident Evil trilogy formula? Count me interested, and having played it for just a couple of hours, well, what more can I say? Well, you have to wait until the end to figure that out, won't you? Who gives a crap about my personal history of this game? All of you subjects want to know how this game came to be, and where it all started from. Well, shut up, sit down, and relax. And the Warlord will tell you all about it. Founded back in 2013 in Italy by Andrea Bonsignore, Invader Games was a small game developer group who had a clear and passionate love for the Resident Evil games of the past. It was also within the same year of the group's founding that they would begin their main project. Using a mixture of Unreal 4 assets and their own in-house viral gaming technology, Vader sound and computer, as well as other assets from previously released Resident Evil titles, they would create their own fan game that would lay the seed for the two games that would have more in common than one may think. That would be
Resident Evil 2 Reaper.
Anyone remember that? And when someone rewatches these old videos, by the way, there are two videos, one in the streets of Raccoon City and the other in the RPD, it looks very, very familiar, as many of its gameplay formulas would be shared between RE2 and Daymare in their final releases. May I go off script quickly, but even for a demo, the lighting is just phenomenal, and the shadows are deep and dark, added to the survival horror vibe, even if it is a bit too dark. And to just add, this showed the internet that Invader Games were a serious team with a passion to recreate a modernized classic, and they have the capability and technical skills to do so, even as a small team of fans. And when these videos were posted to YouTube on July 17th, 2015, it was met to a metaphorical standing ovation. Many who were craving at the time for an official remastering for a game that was getting close to 2 decades old. This, however, would garner Capcom's attention, for good reasons of course, as well as Capcom's announcement of their own remastering effort in 2015. And upon hearing of this remastering effort, on August 2015, Invader Game Studios were officially invited by Capcom to its HQ in Osaka, together with the producers Yoshiaki Hirabayashi, Gon Takeuchi, Tsuyoshi Kanada, and out of this meeting, a compromise was met. Resident Evil 2 Reborn would be cancelled around August 2015, but as a compromise, half of Invader Games' staff would be invited by Capcom to help with Capcom's project, which would, of course, become Resident Evil 2 Biohazard, released on January 25th, 2019, to an obvious critical acclaim, and would become the Game of the Year that same year. The other half of what was left of Invader Games would form a new studio in the countryside of Rome, and become Invader Studios in 2016, and with the resources from before, alongside assistance from the director of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, Kazuhiro Oyama, and the famed artist of the series, Satoshi Nakai, the team would spend the next 2 years and 4 months producing what would become Daymare 1998, the studio's first release. And with that, we arrive at the present. Now that we have the history out of the way, let's just get on with this review. Just a quick note here, I will be comparing a lot of things within this review to 2019's Resident Evil 2. Like I stated before, these games have a lot more in common than one might think, so it seems only logical to compare the two games together. Now, when it comes to the visual aspects of the game, well, it's kind of a mixed bag really. Using some assets from the Unreal Engine 4, the overall visuals of both characters and the levels are acceptable at the most part, looking like something from the late Xbox 360 age. Well, that is with the character models. For the most part they are average. I mean, yeah, they look fine for the most part, except for the hair and their animations. The hair of the main characters just look odd and seem to look glued on and seem ready to fall off at the moment's notice. Looking at you, Sam.
What? How can that be?
And probably one of the worst aspects of the characters is their animations. They're not too terrible, but you'll notice some things that adds unnecessary difficulty for less than fun reasons. For one, during gameplay, there is a slight delay when you do certain actions like doing a 180 spin, sprinting, reloading, opening doors and changing weapons. Whilst they are smooth transitions, there is a slight delay between certain animations. And since this is survival horror, well, not only you have to keep an eye out for bullets and supplies, but you must also make sure you don't do anything daft while surrounded by hostiles and leaving you exposed to the enemy attack as your slow ass slowly gets on with his slow actions. And just like the gameplay sequences, the animations within cutscenes are strange, janky almost. Some just look bizarre with strange spacings between one action and another, and others are just so quick at times it just looks unnatural. For an animated PC character, by the way. And let's not talk about the sprinting animations. They run as if they are desperate for the loot and can't hold it on for much longer. And yet, whilst the humans move around like arthritic joggers and look like something from the middle of the Xbox 360, graphically speaking, the zombies and mutants you will spend more than 10 hours of gameplay gunning down and shoving down the stairs, their character models are quite good. Considering that they are undead, and not only in terms of appearance, but their animations are very good as they shamble across the maps you will traverse, stalking you, and even when they are not doing anything. Unless they get stuck in walls, stuck between random parts of the scenery, or on occasions get launched across the maps as they die. You will see these kinds of graphical anomalies occasionally during your adventures. And even for a horror game, there is gore, but only linked to cutscenes and with the occasional applied headshot, which is still satisfying as hell to pull off. But it just doesn't hold up to Resident Evil 2's grotesqueness and visceral appearance. Yet, whilst the player models look average, the level designs are brilliant. even if we have been there before in other games of the same genre. Throughout the game of Surviving the Horror, you will traverse 7 different environments: laboratories, rural areas, hospitals, and the overrun zombie-infested city. Just very quickly, the town of Keenside is probably as close as one will ever get to playing in the classical rendition of Raccoon City, without playing any of the remasters nor using the Montreal skyline. If you look carefully during your adventures, you will probably find a few places that look really familiar to you, or too familiar. And sometimes you may find things that looks like it was just cut from another game. Not like that's a bad thing. They are well designed and have a look of a once thriving area with an added chaotic mess on the side, providing much backstory to the areas you will explore, as well as seeing some 19th-centric gags and posters. Who remembers the Invader Station with its totally rad non-SNES controller? Or such great TV shows like Pals? Such a crap show. Or the smash hit blockbuster film of 1996, Dependence Week. Or who else remembers some smash hit games like Full Life 3, The Craven Family, or Daymare 1998? What? But unlike the Resident Evil games this is heavily inspired by, the levels are more of a linear configuration than that of a large set of maps where you will backtrack between. You will be exploring from point A to point B, with monsters and puzzles in the way to increase the difficulty, although there are a few levels in between where you will do a little bit of backtracking. The rest of the time, the maps are usually recycled and reversed with different characters taking different routes. As you probably noticed from the footage on screen, most of the levels take place at night, obviously to add to the sense of tension to an already horrible situation with the undead, but also probably to show off the magnificent lighting the studio has made, probably one of the greatest aspects of the visuals and graphics. Good gods, the lighting is amazing. Like a sign from the gods, it pierces the darkness and sheds light to your salvation, but can also hide some of the visuals' flaws very well. Why do I say this? Well, there is this one level set during the day. And oh my god, what the hell is happening to this land? The textures refuse to load in unless you look at them directly. The plants pop in and grow as you move forward, and wow, look at this waterfall! Yeah, therefore, most of the game is set in the dark, because the horror of the zombies couldn't have been bad enough without the landscape looking and acting like an interactive acid trip. So yeah, overall the visuals are kind of a mixed bag. The landscapes are great, most of the time, and if it's not set during the day. The zombies look magnificent if they are not constantly being sick on you, and the characters look okay, except for the head that looks close to gaining self-awareness and ready to leave its owner's face. So now that we have investigated the visuals, let's discuss the sound of this game. I like the sounds of that. Speaking of sound, are you getting sick of that line? Are you? Well, guess what? It isn't leaving. I doubt this part of the review will take very long to discuss. The soundscape of Daymare 1998 is kind of like the visuals. A mixed bag. Voice acting is very hit and miss, varying in quality depending on the characters. Some are very well acted, like Raven.
I used to love this place when I was off duty, especially on Fridays. Man, I could use a drink.
Leah.
Priority red. You do understand that this assignment could be our last. Well, you know, if I were a betting man, I think I'd bet that the odds of making it home in one piece are a lot better with you on the battlefield. But that's if, you know, Gomer Pyle doesn't put us down first.
Just shut the fuck up, Leaf.
And the Cleaner, voice acted by the late and great Paul Haddad. That's right, old Leon Kennedy in his last video game appearance.
All that matters on the chessboard are good moves and the actions you take to achieve this result. What I do is bide in the shadows, where I can strategically exploit the most vulnerable pawns. But this time had to be different. This time, I had to involve my hand directly. But let's get things in the right order. So I began the first phase of my plan.
But others, like many of the side characters you'll hear in cutscenes and audio logs, sound awful.
I knew it. I just frickin' knew something like this would happen sooner or later. We've been playing God, but now we cannot escape the habits of our astounding progress. The company, the government, decades of malevolent work. And my God, I helped them. And now, it's time to pay for our sins. Christ, what have we unleashed?
And other characters like Sandman, and especially Sam, have some of the worst line deliveries in the game.
I don't believe what I see. I grew up in this neighborhood.
Whereas Sandman sounds like a bad guy with too much of a soothing voice and only raises his voice slightly when angered or slightly surprised.
God damn you, Lee! You got only yourself to blame for this, Lee. After all, you're the one that made me this way. Oh, come on, Lee. Stop shaking.
Sam sounds like a good guy trying to be an intimidating bad guy. It just doesn't work and makes him sound awkward, especially his change in tone of voice.
There's no trace of Cooper's car. But where the hell is he? I'm coming for you, you son of a bitch. You'll regret it when I find your sorry ass. Oh, fucking hell. All right. But that's it. If you don't open the door next time, I'm gonna find a way in there, and you ain't gonna like it.
Another problem I personally think is info dumping. Of course, notes are useful to build a backstory of some unlucky survivor or to give a clue to a nearby puzzle. But when voice acted, some of these things take way too long to finish. Listen to this bit from the beginning, for example.
Requesting the evacuation of all remaining personnel. Code Blue, repeat, this is a Code Blue emergency. Please respond, anyone, please. My name is Rebecca Jordan. I'm a doctor at the Aegis Medical Facility on the North Ball Islands. We have a problem of submagnitude here. There's a situation in the building that requires... There's been a terrible mishap. I think we've been exposed to some kind of gas, a corrosive agent that latches onto the lungs, warping people.
Wow, even the zombie was polite enough to allow the scientist to finish before devouring her. And yet, whilst the voice acting is hit and miss, the music is very impressive and adds the ideal amount of tension when exploring and surviving the horror. Then becomes bombastic and energetic to give importance and a sense of heightened stakes in a battle for your life. Composed by Alessandro Galdieri, the soundtrack of Daymare 1998 is a mixture of rock, opera, and very heavy use of synth undertones that seems to be heavily inspired by Goblin's work in 1978's Dawn of the Dead, as well as Fabio Frizzi's soundtrack from Zombie 2, or also known as Zombie Flesh Eaters everywhere else. Whilst exploring the levels, the ambience is very subtle, and with its synthetic undertone gives off a very creepy vibe that heightens your alertness as you explore gore-covered streets and claustrophobic hallways, especially when synthetic shrieks suddenly emerge out of the soundtrack. But when the boss battles begin, the ambience changes from one of suspense to one of high-octane action composed of more operatic or rock anthems, giving the battles a heightened sense of fighting for your life. The game even has its own save room anthem. Yeah, there are save rooms in this game to use. And it sounds very reminiscent of Free From Fear from Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. whilst Free From Fear gives off the vibe of you are safe, but you can't stay here forever, this game's equivalent, Safe Place, gives a more relaxing feeling, a safe refuge to sit and rest your feet while you gather your strength. Nice nod to RE3 Nemesis there, and with that, that's the sound. Yeah, like I said, it wouldn't take too long to do. Not much else to really say, and I stand by what I said about every single bit of it. Now that's out of the way, let's get on to gameplay of this game. When it comes to the gameplay aspect of this game, you will notice that the gameplay is much quicker when compared with Resident Evil 2. The newer one. The tank controls are not that heavy, but that becomes more obvious when the player performs certain actions like picking up items, interacting with interactables, quick spinning or changing weapons. Obviously this is to add more tension to an already tense situation, but some of these actions are agonizingly long, like reloading. Good god, the reloading animations. In the game there's 2 reload speeds. A quick reload where you dump the empty magazine on the floor and insert a new one quickly. Then there's the slow reload. I wouldn't call it slow, more of a methodical reload. It's that slow. Another thing you'll notice right away is the levels you will traverse during your adventures. As stated before, they look great. Yet, unlike Resident Evil 2, both of them, most of the levels are very linear, reaching point A to point B with a few enemies to eliminate and a few puzzles to solve along the way. Out of the 10 levels you will play through, 3 of them are the classical backtracking kind of variant, whereas the rest are the point A to point B maps. Some of the areas will be reused quite a lot, like the town of Keensight will be revisited at least 4 times during your adventures. But since this is one of my favourite maps in the entire game, alongside the hospital, I don't see it as much of a problem. Oh, and the length of the levels vary quite a bit. Some could be finished in as little as 15 minutes, whereas a few others could take about an hour to traverse, excluding retries or pausing for puzzles. As you can probably tell, the gameplay segments of Daymare 1998 are split into 3, and those 3 main parts of the game are combat, exploration, and puzzles. So, let's dive into that and dissect these segments in the name of game reviewing. Yeah, you'll be doing a lot of this. Despite the fact the game is, with a great amount of effort, invoking the classical survival horror games, you will never be truly out of ammunition during your time playing this. Search every corner of the levels you will play through and you will always find ammo in the most unlikely of places, therefore keeping the action flowing. The gunplay for this game is responsive and tight, well, with a keyboard and mouse by the way. The aiming controls are silky smooth and coupled with the thunderous sound effect for the weapons you will use, it is truly glorious. With the exclusion of headshots though, the lack of detailed gore does make the weapons feel less powerful than they rightfully are. Well, except for the MP5. You might as well as spit at the zombies. Speaking more on guns, there isn't much. 3 pistols, a shotgun, an MP5, and 2 high-powered hand cannons. Or the Colt Python or Desert Eagle for you gun nuts out there. You will get all of them in their standard versions. No mods, but a few special ammos. Nor will you have any of the bizarro guns like flamethrowers, a lightning gun that increases in power the more you aim at the bad guy, or the mine thrower. But in a game where many zombies or mutants wait for you and ready to throw up are around every corner, I don't really care if my gun doesn't have laser sights, an extended magazine, or fires dragon flame rounds. If my weapon can bring down an undead critter, it is a weapon worth keeping, even though you only have 3 to swap between. And these guns do the job, until the boss fights happen. And like I said in my Sadeki review, yay, boss fights, the definition of grind and extreme repetition. And to just add, even in the Resident Evil series, I hate the boss fights with a passion. The way the battles are done with waiting for specific cues to shoot, otherwise you just waste ammo. The way you must save your best weapons for that inevitable final brawl. And the way you fight the same dude in different forms more than once. In Daymare 1998, however, as much as I hate to say this as I quite enjoy this game, spoilers, these boss battles are fucking boring. There is nothing special about them whatsoever. You just run around in a predetermined arena, then you circle strafe and shoot them until they drop dead. It doesn't help that most of them are literal bullet sponges, and in a game which prioritizes weapon and magazine management, you're not going to be thinking that as you circle strafe that mutant trying to dice you into many pieces. Luckily for you, there are ammo boxes scattered around to help you keep that mutant slaying supply of bullets topped up in either very brief battles or in some cases 35 minutes worth of shooting, counting retries. But when you've run out of bullets, there is one more weapon at your disposal, the Innocent, and does what it says right off the tin, shove. I'll go as far as to say this is one of the most useful weapons you have compared to that sodding knife. And if used in the right areas like near stairs or near walls, you'll see some hilarious results, even if it does downgrade the horror to some people. But I find it hilarious, shut up. It's also hilarious when you use the shove on a certain boss mutant, especially after they're given the big un from a cutscene. But along the way whilst traversing the landscape, you will come across puzzles. Ah, puzzles. The one main aspect of these kinds of games I loathe. Throughout the game there will be at least one puzzle to solve in each level, usually either in the middle or near the end. But sometimes that increases up to 2 or 3 in some levels, like the hospital or the Aegis lab levels. While I may not enjoy them, they are a good time sink to increase the level's length. And for the most part, most of them are not truly difficult, for there will always be clues nearby to hint your way to a quizzical victory. Fuck! Well, except for that one puzzle where you have to translate a message from Morse code. Yeah, good luck with that. It's story time now, my fellow subjects. A story of corporate espionage, revenge, perseverance, and loyalty. And another zombie-ish outbreak that ruins another rather idealistic town in some Cascadian part of the USA. Thanks, zombie mutant things. So, for anyone who hasn't played the game yet, go to here. Are they gone now? Can we move on now? Good, thank fuck, let's get on with this review. Now, the game's story took about 9 hours, barring a few reincarnations and swearing at my mishaps here and there, to complete. And even though I played on the recommended settings of classic 90s mode, which makes the controls heavier, and on Daymare difficulty, which makes ammo and supplies scarcer, it was easy, personally speaking, but it didn't lessen the fun of participating in the game. Barring the annoying deaths by vomit and bullshit boss battles. You play 3 characters across 5 chapters on their personal journeys during the Keen Sight outbreak and escape the disaster. You play as Leave, the poster boy of the series during its early reveals, and Raven, 2 agents of Hades, or the Hexacore Advanced Division for Extraction and Search, which sounds so much cooler than Umbrella's UBCS. A paramilitary division for the Hexacore Biotechnics Corporation. A group, you will soon discover, makes Umbrella look slightly more level-headed in comparison. Whereas Umbrella has a deep love for espionage and controlling things from the shadows, Hexacore clearly flaunts its evilness. Yeah, evilness is a word now. I mean, for fuck's sake, they have a monster created laboratory in the back room of the local pharmacy. They kill their employees after workspace accidents, dump barrels full of corpses into the sewers, and pretty much make Keen Sight their town-sized laboratory. You will see through gameplay and notes found around the levels. Anyway, characters. And lastly, you will also play as Sam, a firewatch who suffers from violent and disorientating hallucinations, which are annoying as hell gameplay-wise as you will waste bullets shooting the fake enemies, but also has a condition which has sinister links to a government conspiracy that affects all of Keen Sight. As stated before, the game is set in an area surrounding the town of Keen Sight, somewhere around Idaho State, and the fictional island of Norfolk, near Washington State. And it is here that the story begins with a disembodied voice only known as the Cleaner, a man who lives in a sleek and modern laboratory surrounded by monstrous experiments, and seems to be an avid chess player enthusiast. Seems to be telling us the following events you will play through seem to have been under his control and influence. And it is here that the outbreak begins with a chemical spill on Aegis Island, of something that... And after the call for help is sent, a squad of Hades with our main... heroes? And brothers-in-arms who seem to care for each other and fight to the last man for one another.
You're both cowardly little bitches.
Just shut the fuck up, Leave.
What did you just say to me? You better watch your fucking mouth.
Goddamn motor mouth.
Don't let him get to you, kid. That shitbird squawks at anyone with a bigger stick, which is pretty much everyone.
Deployed to Aegis Island to retrieve the chemicals that cause the disaster. Taking control of Agent Leave, you clear the facility of the living and the dead, dispose of the monstrosities, telling a terrified scientist to drop his wrench.
Hey you! Drop your gun and let me see your hands! Right now!
Then shoot him, solve the puzzles, and then obtain the chemicals named by a general who seems to be a fellow enthusiast about ancient Greek mythology. Those chemicals being named Pollux and Castor. Yet, even with the mission complete, the extraction point at the main entrance of the facility is inaccessible due to Aegis Lab being in lockdown. As well as the fact most of the zombies now know where Leave is. So as the main entrance is being hacked open, Leave must survive for a couple of minutes as zombies and mutants attempt to kill him. but he survives the mission and evacuates out of there, thanks to the age-old tradition of circle strafing. But even after mission completed, tensions remain very high on the helicopter ride back to base, as Liev and Sandman have severe issues with each other, with even Raven getting involved after Liev calls him a bitch.
For starters, just think about it. You're both cowardly little bitches that leave comrades to die.
What did you just say to me? You better watch your fucking mouth.
Eventually, shots are fired as Sandman is shot, Raven is shoved out of the helicopter, and an unnamed soldier is killed, just like that. Yet their actions and hissy fits seal the town's fate as a canister of Pollux and Castor is released over the town and turns people into monsters. And due to Liev's poor aim,
Shit, didn't see that coming.
Liev bails out near the town in a very janky cutscene, and after rushing through an overrun Keen site, rests in an airtight warehouse. And it is from this point on the main story of escaping Keen site begins, and the main characters' stories intertwine with one another and all end up face to face with each other in the near future. Now from this point on, I am going to take a detour from my usual storytelling segment. I'm doing this because overall the overarching stories of the main characters basically revolve around doing many other objectives in between regrouping, then facing off with each other at the dam at the outskirts of Keenside. But each of them have different backstories and motivations to get in there. Sam, the Firewatch with that annoying hallucination illness, sees his wife murdered by a seemingly alive and quite insane Sandman. He seeks revenge for his wife and follows Sandman to the Sacred Heart Hospital, where he witnesses Liev, who was waiting extraction by the way, be brutally mutilated by Sandman's unnatural strength, and hear his noisy eating habits. But in his quest for revenge, Sam gets dragged deeper and deeper into the knowledge of clandestine actions by Hexacore on the people of Keenside, as he is blackmailed by a doctor to destroy archives in exchange for Sandman he supposedly has.
Aw, fuck you, man!
Yet this is for naught as the doctor dies and Sandman is not there. But with Liev's DID, or digital inventory device, Sam continues to follow Sandman towards the dam to avenge his wife. And yet, Raven's overall mission is simpler, to regroup a HQ, which is at the dam by the way, and hope to find his mentor Sandman, thus colliding with Sam's interest in killing Sandman. With Raven's arrival at the HQ dam, and its too being overrun by undead mutants, Clean Slate Protocol has been enacted as the United States Army's quarantine efforts have failed. Sound familiar? This means the dam will be destroyed and flood the infested town, despite the potential environmental catastrophe in the future. So, as Raven fights his way to the top of the dam after finally getting into contact with Sandman, he comes face to face with another mutant that wears the uniform of someone familiar. And after defeating the abomination in a laboratory with a hand from a surviving scientist, he drops a bombshell revelation. It's Liev, having already been subjected to Castor Pollux infection earlier, you know, when he jumped out of the helicopter and fought the mutants, and then had to seal himself in a warehouse for a while. He has mutated further into a new form of mutant from the virus's strain that is beyond curable. The only cure is bullets, and lots of them. Seriously. Now with the blank slate protocol enacted, and the dam set to explode, Raven needs to leave. But like any other Japanese-inspired survival horror game ever made, Liev returns and has made it his objective for you to not leave this charming dam. So, after trying and failing multiple times, and then noticing barrels conveniently placed to shoot them and hinder Liev the mutant, provides Raven with enough room to reach the top of the dam. But oh, what a surprise, Liev has re-emerged and wants to try and kill you for the final time. And after a battle that lasts about 15 minutes, and with plenty of ammo boxes around, finally put Liev to rest. Just as the battle ends, Sandman arrives. And then to add to the awkwardness to the situation, Sam finally arrives, and a tense standoff occurs. But at this point, Sandman's Daymare kicks in and his wife begins berating him, making Sam unstable. Yet, Sandman seems to know more about this condition Sam is suffering from. Then a gunshot rings out. And then it ends. Or does it? But wait, there is more to do after finishing the story. You'll also have a chance to participate in Dead End mode.
What's that?
Says a rather perceptive subject. Well, to answer that so-and-so's questions, they are 4 missions on 4 maps from the story in which you complete an objective whilst trying to complete it as quickly as possible, as well as being scored on kills. So basically Mercenaries mode from RE3, or the bonus levels in RE2. They are fun to play, a good time sink to extend the gameplay for Daymare. So overall, despite some rather harsh criticisms of the game, I really enjoyed my time with this game. And for their first game, this is incredibly well made and modernises the survival horror genre it was inspired by. Round of applause, Invader Studios. Yeah, the game is a bit short, the animations are a bit janky, the levels are reused way too often, and the voice acting varies in quality. Yet, this is a definite passion project. Love was put into this game, the love for the older survival horror games of yore. And yet, it also kind of led the way for indie games to create their own survival horror games. Inspired by the past in an industry where only Capcom tends to make these kinds of games within the AAA game sphere. So, Invader Studios, you have my respect. And I would highly recommend this game to the masses. Not only because this game is great at the price you can get it for, but you are supporting an indie studio who have the skills and passion to create this great game. And with another game to the Daymare series, Daymare 1994, to be released later in 2022, I will keep an eye on this series and look forward to the next game of this series that has great potential. Best of luck, Invader Studios. And before signing off, I'd highly recommend you watch G-Man Lives's review of this game. He gives this game quite a bit of justice, as well as that distinctive Australian flair to his reviews. You'll know once you hear it. And with that, I conclude this review. I hope you all enjoyed it, and thank you for your patience waiting for this latest broadcast. I think for my next review I'm going to change genre. I seem to be getting a bit disillusioned with shooting waltzing corpses all the time. Yeah, I'm going to do a racing game next. Which one? Well, there are many out there, so I will let you figure out which one it might be. Anyway, this concludes another Warlord's broadcast on the game I have conquered. Stay safe in this wacky world. This is the Warlord, signing out.
Who are you? What are you doing here?
Hold your fire! I'm a human!
Have they all lost their damn minds? I need to get back to the city to... Oh no. Brad. What the hell is going on here?
I don't have a clue. By the time I noticed something was wrong, the entire city was infested with zombies.